Welcome back to the Berg podcast. Today we're talking about autonomy. Today with me, I've got Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And we're going to talk about autonomy because it's a word we use a lot, and we've sort of developed what we think is our own version or definition of autonomy. And so we thought it'd be helpful to get into what do we mean by autonomy. So, Ford, when you started with this business model, you had some perspective and you knew what you liked about the industry and you knew what you didn't like about the industry. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit. I think that'll kind of start the conversation with where we are.
Sure. Well, I mean, our industry in general, and it's still happening today, but it's a very top-down model. And there's always someone.
What do you mean by top-down? So, the
top-down in that there's someone at the top that is managing every detail of everything.
Someone's got their thumb on everything.
Absolutely. Like I always tell the story. So just 2-3 years ago before COVID, I was at one of my peer group things, and we were having a meeting, and we were offsite. We're out of the country actually, and the one guy has to take a break in between meetings to make a phone call. Now this is the owner of a company that does almost double what we do in revenue a year, and he's calling back, and he's talking about inlet number 9. And what caught me most by surprise, but also just by how exhausting that is this guy is running a huge company with like 100 and some employees, and he's still focusing on inlet number 9 on a job. Now that's not wrong, but the question is that how is that guy in the field able to manage his own project if he's having somebody from that level worry about inlet number 9? And so the way we've set it up in difference to that is that we have the end line of where we want to be, and we want people to take the initiative to figure out how to get there. We will gladly support them, and if they have issues or questions, we want to help them. But I always say, if I have to manage someone doing a job, then I might as well do it myself. So there's no need for that person. So the whole point of having people working with you is that they can use their expertise on their own to figure things out. Yeah. And I think that's where that's a big point of ours. And sometimes it runs us into trouble because people might come from other companies in the industry and they get surprised by it, or that doesn't work for them. And so maybe they're not a right culture fit for us here. But that's something strong in our culture, is the allowance of people to figure out how to get to the end line on their own. And we will support them, but they have to use their own initiative to get there.
Yeah, there's a buzzword that we like to use for that. It's called empowering. We empower people. So.
Yeah, no, to come off of what Ford's saying, and I'll start with this. There's a person at each company locally that is run in that old top-down way, and the people in the industry know who that person is. It's the person with their thumb on everybody, and they're controlling everything. Everything runs through them. They're integral to the company. They've made themselves so important. The company will not run without them. And to Ford's point, not only is that stressful and it's tiring, but it also really limits you, because you can't, if only one person's going to do it, there's a limit to what that one person is capable of. And it makes everybody have to answer to that one person. So we just didn't feel like that was the way that we wanted to operate. That's not how we wanted to develop and grow Berg. And I did something funny when we said we were going to talk about this, and it was more like a Bryan sort of thing. So I looked up, like, what does autonomy mean? What's the definition of autonomy? Because we were having a discussion previously, and I realized that I interchange words that may not be exactly the same. So, like, by definition, the way people take autonomy when I say it a lot of times, we talk about it, is they say, we want them to work independently, right? Very simple. We want them to work independently and exist on their own. And I think we'd all agree that's not really true. I don't want people to work on their own. I want them to feel like they're part of a team. I want them to feel like they have a strong support group. So I don't want them to work independently. And then there's another version of the definition that says you're going to have the freedom to control or govern one's own actions. So now we're getting closer to what I mean, because now I'm saying, like, okay, we're going to tell you, in Ford's point, to say, here's where we got to get to. But I'm not going to tell you how to get there. I'm going to say, you're a professional. You know what you're doing, likely better than I do. So you have to get to this point, work together as a group, and reach this resolution. But there's a definition that I actually thought was even closer to what I want and really ties what I want to do and what we want the company to be, how we want it to operate. And it really runs through our core values. And And that one was acting in accordance with one's own moral duty rather than desires, which is really a funny way of explaining autonomous. But if you get away from the morality of it and really make it that you're acting in a way that you're doing what is best for the group, that you're trying to get to an end as efficiently as you can, not necessarily with what you want to do or what's best for you individually, but rather as a group, that you're able to work together and have the drive, the internal drive, to be able to get there. And I think that when you start to use that kind of a definition, it really ties really well to some of our core values.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that empowering word is a buzzword, but I mean, ultimately, that's what really we're talking about. We're talking about giving people the end goal, right? Sort of setting the boundaries and allowing them to figure out the right way to get us to the finish line. Now it takes some resources, right? Got to give them the right tools, the right connections, the right people to talk to. But ultimately, and I think it was in your definition there, and it's one of our core values. We want them to own their piece. We want them to take responsibility to own their piece. It doesn't mean there won't be failure. It doesn't mean there won't be mistakes. But it also means that they shouldn't have to call Ford or Dan about inlet number 9.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like you might go to 2 of our job sites with 2 different foremen on it, and they might not be doing the similar process, but be doing it differently. When I got to a job site and I talked to a guy about like the job, I'm not interested in inlet number 9, as we put with air quotes. But what I want is that they have a thought of how they want to get the job done. That's what we're looking for. It's like, okay, we have to do this, then we have to do this, and we have to do this. If they have questions, I'll be glad to answer them or get the right answers for them. But it's more about just that they're looking, their heads up, they're looking into the future of the rest of the project, how they can get the work that they need to get done as efficiently as possible. And that allows them to really own, because it's their plan. It's not a plan that was given to them, it's their plan. And, sometimes, like you said, that plan might not work out, but that is their plan, and they're able to make those adjustments as they need on their job sites. And so they own their job sites.
Now, I think an important point here is that autonomy does not come without expectation, right? So, and we talk about, we joke sometimes about the difference between working from home and doing work at home. And so, the expectation is that we've got a bid, we've got some structure to our costs and resource and et cetera, as far as the terms of how we expect to look when we get to the goal. But inside of that, we expect a foreman or anybody really in a decision-making capability or capacity to sort of get themselves.
Well, and I always looked at a bid when I was doing project running jobs as like a competition. So this is what the estimator put together. This is their best guess based on the information they had. My whole goal was to beat that. And now it might not beat it on each item, or it might not beat it on one part. But my whole goal was to always try and figure out a better way of getting something done. Because you know what? There might be a new way. There might be something different. It might be something the field conditions are different than what you expected. But that was always like kind of like a target, like if you put a target on the wall and you want to hit something, that's always like, okay, I'm going to try and beat this. That was really like the way my mentality was when I was running a field job.
And when you say beat it forward, you're talking about that bid is sort of establishes a guide or a thought to what the cost is and how long it's going to take, right? And so we can beat those costs, or we can do it at that cost, but in a more timely fashion. That's a win for us and a win for our client.
Exactly.
Yeah, Ford, somewhere else we see that that I know that you and I really enjoy, and then people misconstrue it to be that we love snow. But really, in snow, you see it a lot. And Ford knows as well as anybody, Colt, Scott, Brad, any of the guys that are running sites know I'm like known for gambling on when I want to go to salt, when I'm going to stop plowing. And it's that same thinking as Ford. I know what the estimate says, and I know how many hours I have to do a job that we're anticipating 4 to 6 inches of snow. I know how many hours we have to get that done, and we got to be out of there, or else we're not going to make our money. So the gamble there is how early can I come out of pushing and go to salt, and so that we have less cleanup, or can I avoid the pushing at all? And the one that sticks in my mind sort of is, and Ford will remember this, is we were at Merck, and it was supposed to snow 2 inches. And it snowed 3.5, 4 inches. And we're into it. And I've committed us to the salt. There is a lot of salt on the ground. There's a lot of money put down that the only way we win is if we don't push. And I remember Tom called me and he was like, you got like 2 hours. If this doesn't melt, we're in a world of trouble. And I was like, it's going to melt. I didn't know it was going to melt. I believed it would melt, but you're that's the excitement that you get from that level of autonomy. And in that specific scenario, Tom and Ford were standing there. Like, in other words, that's the kind of autonomy that Berg allows, is that you can have the owner standing right next to you. And if he has delegated to you that it's your call, it's your call. And he's gonna ride with you to that. And I try to carry that, and I try and instill that in all the project managers and foremen to take that same attitude right down to our laborers, that if they believe that's the best way to do this and they can explain to you how, then let's do it that way if it's better than my way. Because my way wasn't necessarily the right way. It was just the best guess that an estimator gave you in a form.
Yeah. Some people confuse with this autonomous mentality or expectation for not being collaborative, right? But I think that that's not true. If you look at the way we work, I actually look at it. March 2020, we said, hey, we got to go home for 5 weeks or whatever the government told us to do. And, the interesting thing for me was like that experience or experiment, so to speak, really showed me like while we could all work in whatever capacity we were able to or tried to autonomously and on our own, it did not mean that collaboration stopped. So we still got on the phone once a day at least, typically conferred several times a week about how we were trying to get guys back to work, what opportunities we were looking for, et cetera. And so autonomy does not necessarily mean you can't work without collaboration or as part of a team, but it does mean that you are expected to take responsibility and take action, right? And show actionable steps to accomplishing the goals that our team has.
And I think with the autonomy thing, to tie into that, is that also creates a higher level of expectation, because it's your job, it's your plan, so it has to follow through. Now, there's conditions that makes it unfathomable, but that's part of it, is that if you want that, if you want to work here, you want to have that autonomy to manage your own shovel, manage your own machine, manage your own job site, there's also an expectation that comes with that that's higher, because we are allowing you to have that creativity. So there's that balancing act there that sometimes gets caught up in the mix.
Yeah, when I made a note, what I said to myself was, when I was really trying to define what I wanted autonomy to be, it was that the person, the individual, feels empowered, confident, and driven enough to get the job done, to confront the challenge that they face, and to get to the end and be able to put your name on it. And when I sort of say it that way, and I was careful that I said it that way, I think there's 3 of our core values, because I want to let you feel like an owner, and I want you to own that piece, do your job. And I want you to have the freedom to be able to come up with a solution. And I want you to be able to have a product that when you're done, you're proud of it, and you can tell your kids or your family or your spouse, friends, I did this. And you may want to talk about it more than they want to hear about it, because they look at it and it's all they see is usually the building. We talk about that. But the reality is that's what we want out of autonomy, because I think that kind of autonomy is not only good for Berg Construction on how we do work, what we produce, and if we're profitable side, but I think it's good for individuals. I think it's good for people. It gives them purpose, and you can go home and be proud of what you did because you own that piece.
Yeah. Something you said there struck a chord with me a little bit. So, we talked a little bit earlier about the fact that this is a little unusual in our industry, right? In our industry, there's a lot of times very clear lines, and you get in line and you do your piece, and that's you're told every step of the way, micromanaged a lot of times about how to get that thing done, and this is a little counter to that. So I'm curious, Dan, from an operational perspective, Ford, you've from a recruiting perspective, as you bring in supervisors, leaders, How hard is that to adopt? We're bringing people in from organizations that have never let them do this. How hard is that for people to make the transition?
Well, I think that is something we've learned the hard way because we didn't communicate it appropriately in the beginning. And to some people, that became a challenge. And so they weren't able to continue on with us. But I think that as you continue to communicate that, and it's also part of their personality. I know we do personality tests for some management people here when we're bringing them in just to kind of see how they like to, how their brain is wired, shall we say. And so, us looking at those results and then also just talking to the person, that's all we have to judge things on. But that's what we have to go on and see how some people, they might have been held down and flourish with us. Other people, they might have been doing it that way so long that they just can't get out of that space. And unfortunately, they're just not right for our team and our culture. So, we're right for the right people. We're definitely not right for the other people.
Yeah, we've experienced both, right? I mean, I think about superintendent we have working for us. He's got the right personality, he's got the right character traits, the right experience. But when he got here, one of the things he was saying was like he was tired of being micromanaged, right? In his previous life and his other places of employment. But like 2 weeks in, he was like, I don't even know if I'm doing what you guys want me to do. I feel like, I've been given total control of the steering wheel here. And it was a little bit shocking, right? So, and now ultimately he does have the right qualities and characteristics, and he's had success here at our organization and been an important part of our team. But I think you're right. For the right people, it can be freeing and empowering and all of those things. For the wrong people, though, we found sometimes they're not able to make that switch, unfortunately.
Well, that and that's the other thing that the benefit to this is too that um, there's a saying, players play through. And I think the one cool thing with the system and the way we have it set up is we really get to see people for what they are, what their skill sets are quicker maybe than we would any other way. And it allows people to grow within the company maybe faster than some other places because we're allowing these people to do stuff. And when they have success, we can see that and then we can use them and they can, maybe rise up the ladder of theoretical terms are called or whatever they can do. We can actually see it's much easier to see those rock stars than if it was done the other way because then you can't tell whose decisions something happened. It was just everything came from the boss down. But here we're letting say, hey, you know what? That young guy, he made a decision on his own. He did a good job. And then, he's in the running maybe for a promotion at some point sooner than maybe other places.
Yeah, in the example you're talking about, Bryan, and I remember that, he said, well, I haven't seen Dan. I've been here 2 weeks and I haven't seen Dan. So that got back to me. So I went out to see him and everything looks great. We're moving along nicely. But I heard you wanted to see me. And he was like, well, you haven't been here. I was like, well, we had a discussion. I said, like, I'll support you in any way you need, but I'm not going to check up on you. And so, it is a learning curve. It is I don't know, learning curve is the right idea. You need a grace period. Like it is not something that many people are comfortable with. And we've seen even the people who adapt to it really well still need a little bit of a time period to understand that it's okay. We're not checking on you because you're doing your job. You're doing exactly what we asked you to do, or doing as close to that as you can right now, given the scenario. And then we've also had to learn to be quicker in identifying people who are struggling, and who are not going to make it and say, okay, can they make it? And to your point earlier, when we're making the joke about with everything that's going on lately and everybody wants to work remotely. And I said, there's a big difference between working from home and working at home or working on your home. Like there's a difference between just that you like that you're not at work and you like working, but it can efficiently be done from home.
Well, and that's the joke art industry. There's not many positions that allowed for.
No.
I mean, it's like all of us could theoretically do a lot of our work. We learned this during COVID, probably from more remote places than we do it at. But there is just a certain camaraderie of being in the same building. There is certain things that come up that there's no way. I talk to a lot of people from big corporations, and they're like, if they really want to get things done, this working from home thing is just not quite as productive as they had hoped it to be. But for us, having your butt in the seat on the job site is the only way the work's going to get done. Unfortunately, we can't jump on a Zoom call and run a dozer.
Yeah, I mean, we can't operate as silos here. We're all connected. So
yeah, that and Bryan, that's probably a great way for me to like close out what I'm going to say about this topic is autonomy is the complete opposite of silos. It's that we want you to be so collaborative that you don't need to reach out for help. So like it's counterintuitive to what you think, and we really have learned, to your last question, we have learned that in the interview process and even more in the onboarding process, we have to figure out ways to be very direct and let people understand what autonomy means to us and how it plays out in what's going to be expected from them.
Yep, absolutely true. So hopefully that gives you a better feel about what we mean when we say autonomy or when we're asking people to function autonomously. Thanks again for joining us. We hope you guys have a great day.